You have lots of different board games with miniatures. Today I'm going to show you how to paint them as we look at the Cthulhu Death May Die box. Today we're going to paint some minis for Cthulhu's Death May Die, and then in the second video we're going to get some mates together, we're going to roll some dice and play a game. Now I've had this idea in mind for a while now, and whilst my own board game minis could certainly use a coat of paint, I thought I'd reach out to the team and see if they had a game in mind of their own that I could paint for them, because I'm just awesome like that. Gordon didn't miss a beat. He turned up on my doorstep with a board game, Cthulhu Death May Die. Gordon's done well to even carry these into my basement. I can barely lift it up. It must have been successful on Kickstarter because it's full of minis. There will be more miniatures in these board game boxes than I would have in one of my Warhammer armies. So if you're not a regular or a confident painter, this is a mammoth of a task to be able to get through all of these miniatures. So let's have a look at some tactics on how we're going to approach it. So this is where our first strategy begins. We are starting small with an achievable goal. I go through the list of missions, or in this case, episodes, and I find one that looks like it'll be fun for my mates and I to play. On the mission card, it'll tell me what specific miniatures I will need to be able to play it. I grab those ones and put them aside, and then we pick out 3 different investigators that we want to play, and then one big bad scary monster out of the set. So from the 3 boxes, I've now culled it all the way down to only 22 minis that I need to paint. I'm really keen to get started painting though, and to show you the ideas that I've come up with. So sit back and relax. Or if you're on your own painting journey, grab your brush and let's get started. Before I put any paint to model, I'm starting by giving them a bath using warm soapy water. The reason being that when the models are made, they often have a mold release agent still on them and your paints could struggle to stick. Using a toothbrush, I give them a scrub and then a rinse with clean water. Another consideration is removing any lines on the model as a result of the plastic mold that they were in. You can use a dedicated tool or even the back of a hobby knife. I've primed the models in white so that the next stages are still quite bright. I'm starting by painting each of the models with 3 different base colours. I'm using my airbrush, but you could use a brush here. If you do, use a larger size brush to save on time. These will end up being the recessed shadow areas on the model, and rather than being standard dark colours, they're going to be bright. I'm hoping this will work because the colours of purple, blue and pink should have an ominous horror feel to them. This isn't my original idea. Craftworld Studio paints some amazing minis, and I've seen them use this type of shadowing, and Ninjon recently made a video where he painted a Voltan character by starting with these colours. The difference today though, is we can use this same theory but for speed painting. We'll make for an ordinary video if I can't though. Each model is receiving the same 3 colour treatment with purple sprayed from the lower right, blue from the lower left and the back, and magenta in some of the select areas above. Starting with dry brushing the monsters. I have a selection of paints, some varying size dry brushes, a dampening pad and a texture board. I'm starting with a very bright white and completely brushing this across my model. This is acting as a base coat that will end up completely covered but will make the colours still to come catch easier and pop out more vibrantly. Dry brushing is a technique that can be used for quickly painting models as we lightly drag a wide paintbrush across the texture of the model with a damp paint that will catch the edges as the brush passes. Instead of a wet palette, I'm using the texture pad as I don't need to add any water to these paints. I'll mix the colours on here, and the first colour is Cabalite Green. I mix a little with my previous purple in there as well. When dry brushing these colours, I'm working my way from dark at the bottom and in the recess areas, and I'll blend with lighter colours around the top. Once I'm ready for a brighter colour, I'm mixing some moot green in and making my way up the model as I paint up to the next section. H.P. Lovecraft created the fictional cosmic entity which first featured in 1928. Cthulhu is depicted as a gigantic creature worshipped by cultists and in the form of a green octopus, dragon and human hybrid. Having your brush slightly damp is important because if your brush is completely dry and you're wiping excess away then painting, it can leave a dry, chalky look on the model, which we want to avoid. Ice yellow plays a role here to help the brightest colours stick to the model. I can mix it in with moot green and also a fluoro green to create the final brightest colours on the raised and most prominent areas. You can see now the effect that dry brushing has on a model, but consider what type of model lends to this technique. Models with lots of fine detail like scales, fur and bumpy skin will catch the paint on sharp points, but a smooth surface like Space Marine power armor or a smooth panel vehicle won't have the same effect. Now's a good time to mention that if you're happy with how the model looks at any point during these steps, or if you're running out of time with what you wanted to allocate to the models, then you can call it done. I'm going to show you some extra steps now in case you're on a roll and you want to add something more to them. The hunting horrors have these great big wings, and both Cthulhu and the Starspawn both have wings on their back as well. Fleshy pink wings should look really good. I'm mixing a pink with a flesh tone 3 different times as I work my way from base to highlights on the wings. Bugman's Glow with pink horror first. I'm covering the flesh of the wings everywhere except for the coloured shadows. I'm not worried about being super neat and tidy, and if I make small mistakes, I'm not going back to correct them. We want models that look cool and we're quick to achieve. Even with a few small mistakes, these will look so good whilst we play compared to bare plastic. Cadian flesh tone mixed with Emperor's Children. Because I'm thinning and mixing paints, I'm now using the wet palette. If you don't have these exact colours, don't rush out and buy them because I'm honestly just winging it. There's no fancy recipe. Look at what you have, and in a pinch, you can mix a little white or yellow with the pink and skin tones to create your highlights. The final Monster Mash cocktail is Kislev Flesh and Fulgrim Pink. And if you don't play Warhammer, these paint names are absolute madness. Yep, this was fast and easy, and I like the way the wings look with the cool purple and blue shadows. Now Cthulhu's Zoidberg-inspired tentacles could use some attention as well. Similar theory here, light purples and painting in horizontal strips to emphasise the bumps along the way. I've decided I won't hit you with obscure colour names anymore. A medium purple, and then I mix it with a little white to create a lilac colour. Let's call that Horror Octopus Insanity Lilac. Done. That's money. Time for this monster to get his nails done, and then paint the whole base black. No need for fancy bases, because they will be played on a board with plenty of art to paint the scene and the theme for us. Onto the cultists now, and I'm starting with the large robes that they wear. Gordon wanted these red, and lucky I asked because I was going to paint them a cream colour. Gordon was kind enough to point out that a cream or a white colour for the robes could be problematic. I'll paint one of the model's robes in entirety first to ensure that I'm happy with the end result. A deep red mixed with a little black as the base, and then I'm working my way brighter with a standard red and then a red mixed with a little orange. For one individual cultist, this took longer than I'd hoped to paint the robes, but I guess these models feature in pretty much every game, and I won't have to paint them in next episode's worth of Monsters batch, so I can put the extra time in here. Happy with the first model, and now I begin moving cultist to cultist, completing the same colour across each model before mixing the next. Now this is where you queue up your TV shows, a podcast, or some flashing badger painting videos, which I hear are really good. Blech. And you allow yourself to switch off and get through this longer stage. Not everything needs to pop out when we're painting a mini, especially if we're looking at speed painting and saving time. If I invest too much into all the little areas, the model will look too busy. So, to save on some time, I'm putting the effort into painting the robes, which are probably the most eye-catching part of the cultists. So for the skin, I'm painting a flesh colour across the face and hands. The face needs some definition, so I'm adding a brown wash here. Army Painter skin tones or something like Agrax or Reikland Flesh Shade from GW will do the trick. If you add too much, draw a little back up with your brush. An easy and cheeky detail is adding gold to the ornaments on their robes. You don't need to be precise here for it to look good. Err on the side of dragging your brush across raised areas and catching 80% of it rather than pushing in too far and getting gold in the recess areas. Highlighting the top of a few points with a brighter gold will draw attention to their bling and then a wash over the top. If you have a wash colour like sepia, then use it as it will bring warmth as well as shadow to your gold, but if not, use the same brown wash that you use for their skin. The boots are brown with no wash, shade or highlights because no one is interested in their shoes. Batch painting can be tedious work, and if you're struggling for motivation and you need a small win, a tip that I have for you is to grab one individual model, something like an investigator, and paint it from start to finish. You'll then have a 100% completed model that you'll be able to show your mates or post online, and you'll feel that you've had a win, and that'll give you the boost that you need to continue with the rest. With the books, I'd planned to completely paint them, but I also actually kind of like the blue, purple and pink shadow colours on them. It gives them a sacred and evil tone feel. So I'm going to try and keep some of those colours visible as I thin down a bone colour. And note that I'm dragging the brush in a direction ending where I want the colour to be the darkest. By doing this, the page colour will be semi-transparent halfway down the page where it transitions with the shadows, but more solid and opaque at the top. I work my way along the line, and by the time I come back to the first model again, it's dry and ready for a second thin coat. I'm using a brown and a thin brush to add some sacred text into their books, as well as a stick figure where I imagine that this particular cultist has discovered that their child has included their preschool crayon drawing in here, and the cultist is wondering if he can just throw it out or if he's obligated to stick it on the fridge with a magnet for a week or two. Anyway, base is painted black and this batch is completed and ready to summon something from the depths of hell. Thanks guys. I've left my favourite part to the end, the investigators. These models will have small plastic ring bases that they clip into, which vary in colour, to denote which player is which. This is handy as it means I don't have to try and paint them in a bright and varying dominant colour to have them identifiable on the board. So I can instead just go with how I feel, or I can use the card art. I figure that Gordo will appreciate them looking more like the art in the game, so I'll roll with that. There's no change in my style at this stage. I'm keeping the coloured shadows and I'm painting in layers using the wet palette, so instead I can tell you a little about the characters that you will see in the game. Father Luke never intended to be God's terrible sword, but he finds the life suits him. As a shepherd of his tiny flock in the village of Lismore, he became aware of a growing movement towards occultism among his congregation. Little occurs that remains hidden in such small communities, and a few sudden disappearances aroused his suspicion. He expected something nefarious when he investigated. He did not expect something so horrific. The cult he uncovered would have killed him along with the others, had not the Lord intervened so spectacularly. Scarface Al is indeed a gangster, killer, bootlegger, and racketeer. He's also a highly effective weapon against the cults and their elder gods, and an example of the ends justifying the means, the bootlegging that brought him such fame and fortune now funnels to multiple investigator operations. Scarface Al is himself a dangerous combatant, willing and able to employ his army of thugs to put down cult uprisings anywhere they may occur. Indeed, his own bully boys are prime recruits for cults needing muscle, and L is protective of his own. If you're going to paint your own using these styles, then I'd love to see how they turn out. Tag me in your Instagram pictures. Richard Irons works for MI6 in the British Secret Service, an agency which technically doesn't exist. While MI6 handles the majority of Great Britain's foreign intelligence, it's also tasked with battling Her Majesty's more exotic enemies, namely the cults and the elder gods they revere. Richard Irons may look like little more than a globe-trotting playboy, but this is merely a cover for a deadly investigator capable of rooting out and destroying cult activity anywhere in the world. He often lends legitimacy to less official investigators when working at their side, a valuable asset when local law enforcement has been compromised. They're all finished and they're ready for the tabletop. The models were easy and fun to paint, and the end result is this cool Twilight Eldritch horror look, but the models themselves aren't that dark. The blue and purple shadows offer that spooky feel, but the bright layers over the top will make them stand out when we play. If you've enjoyed me painting some different kinds of models in a different style, well, you had best let me know below. So next up will be filming of a game of us playing Cthulhu Death May Die for your amusement. If you'd like, you can always subscribe and hit the notification bell, and that way when it comes out, you won't miss it. Thanks so much for hanging around to the end of the video. I have an idea on what I want to paint next and film for the channel, but if you do have any suggestions, just leave them for me in the comments below and I'll check them out. Thanks again, and I'll see you on the next video.